Today our topic is going to be Final Fantasy XIV, but not for the people who have been playing, no, not at all. This is going to be for the people who are thinking about getting into the game or have just started after years and years of expansions have been added to the game. This is going to be a series, so buckle up as we go over some of the things you should know and kind of need to know to begin your journey. The first thing I want to tackle and make blatantly clear is that there is in fact a lot of content to cover within the base game itself. What this means is the very first portion of the game, known as A Realm Reborn, has a lot of additional content, and a lot of it could be considered filler content. However, that really depends on your style of play. So I'd like to break that down based on what I consider filler content and let you come to your own conclusion on the matter. So let's start here with what we know is not filler content as a fact and is purely main story quest. You will hear me later in the video refer to these as MSQ for shorthand going forward. As I stated before, there's a lot of content within the beginning of the game, as overwhelming as it may sound in the first portion before any expansions are added to the main story. There is a total of 211 quests for the primary lore. This does not include side quests or unlocking additional dungeons, which we will cover in another video, dungeons specifically. Now I know you're probably thinking one of two things. Either that is extremely overwhelming, or heck yeah, that's a lot of content to play. If you are overwhelmed, don't let it get to you. However, I must state that the game's story does start slow, but it picks up. If you're pleased with the high MSQ count this early on, I got news for you. It's a trend. Also, if played naturally without doing any side missions, this will take you typically from level 1 to 50, give or take. You might be at like 49 at 80% or something like that. But it does streamline you kind of nicely to 50. With that out of the way, let's talk about what I consider filler and you may not. Job quests. I'm sure you're probably confused by that, but hold on there. In 14, you can use one toon or one character that you've created to play every single job in the game. So the job you select in the character creation is likely not the job you're going to end up with. However, it's not required gameplay to continue the MSQ. See, job quests are purely, as you might have guessed, to advance your job. So let's go over that for a little bit. First, let's get this out there. Your actual level is tied to your job you're currently playing. So if you're doing the MSQ on a pugilist, for example, and you get to level 10, but decide to play a white mage, you will drop back down to level 1 once you switch. This becomes convoluted a little later as certain jobs start with a higher base level. Machinist, for example, starts at level 30. Now the job quests act as a story guide for each job, giving you lore and advancements for the job you're wishing to play. Again, this is not a requirement for the main story, but it is absolutely heavily encouraged if you wish to play your job correctly. Why is that? Well, some skills are locked behind leveling your job, while other skills are locked behind actual quests you pick up for your job. An important distinction. Having said that, you may be wondering how I consider it filler. Well, it is, and it isn't. You're going to want to do your job quests alongside the MSQ as you grow. However, just like the MSQ quest line, some of them are locked behind levels. For example, you get a job quest at level 5 and another one at level 10. For the first primary class you're starting as, it is very important to pick these up as you progress. The filler portion of job quests comes purely in the fact that you do not need to pick up any other classes throughout the story as you're going along. However, the option is there, and each individual class has its own job quest and own storyline. You have the option to skip the dialogue and cutscenes, of course, if you find yourself not caring about it, which is why I consider it filler. Remember, for the job you're playing through the MSQ for, your main if you will, you want to pick up every job quest you can as you progress. For classes you are trying out, it's not required unless you actually want to progress them as well. Distinction between filler and priority. Last thing about job quests before we move on to the next portion of filler. There are also job quests that are not only locked behind levels, but also locked behind content, or rather expansions. What does that mean exactly? Well, I'll give you an example from my own personal playtime. Leveling up Summoner, I got to 70 far before I got to the expansion for Stormblood. Now at 70, I'm able to pick up a job quest that I was excited about for a specific summon. However, the quest giver was locked behind the expansion because they were in a town I had not made it to yet. This is a thing to keep in mind when progressing. There are sites to help with this and show you where to find the quests and when they unlock. Some classes and jobs are also entirely locked behind owning an expansion. Something else to keep in mind. Fates are next on the list. Now while these are beyond fun and exciting in my personal opinion, and I recommend them to everyone, they are absolutely 110% not required. That means I could back up 10% and still be at 100. So what are fates? They're small instances that pop up on maps throughout the world. They appear as circles with various icons in the center, and the icons depict the type of fate that they are. For example, some may have an angry face that to me strangely resembles Pokemon. Those type of fates would be boss fates. A big monster at the center of the circle, you go in there, you beat them up good. I say again, they are fun, but they are not required content in any way, shape, or form at all. There is no instance in which you have to do these to proceed through the story. They are simply filler content. Now, why would you want to do that? That is something I will cover in a different video that just purely talks about fates. Right now, I'm still trying to cover what is filler content and how to get by that, and what you should do instead of focusing on said content, and how to think your way through the rest of this game from start essentially to finish. So as one might guess, since this is in fact an MMORPG, there are quests that reside inside of the townships, and they are quests that are absolutely bonkers in what they ask you to do. It could be going from getting flowers and bringing them over to Mary Sue, or getting a pie from Susan, bringing it over to John or Malkovich. It's just that simple. These are what we call fetch quests. There are a lot of them because, again, that is the nature of the beast of MMORPGs. You cannot really escape it. Unfortunately, some MMORPGs kind of tone it down. Others don't, and some just don't care. 14 has the weird... How do I want to say this? They get away with it because the rest of their content is so good. But these fetch quests do exist. Now, they will look like essentially yellow exclamation points inside of a circle, like a speech bubble, but not every single one of those is a fetch quest, but every single one of those is essentially filler. Because you have to remember, even the dungeons that you can pick up that are not part of the main story quest are not required content. It's not something that you have to do. It may be something that your friends want to do with you, but it's definitely not something that you have to do. And you will find out through personal experience, trial and error. You can miss a lot of dungeons just by running straight through the story. Now the story, that is something that I want to touch on, and I'm going to end out this video with that. While the story is great and it unfolds very nicely, I want to preface this, and I want to make this very clear as I end this out. There are points in the story that do drag. Remember, I told you the first main story quest, the first MSQ for Realm Reborn, is a total of 211 pieces, 211 quests. Now, some of these quests are simply just walking up to somebody and talking to them, quest complete. But still, that's 211. Now, I'm only emphasizing this not to deter anybody, but to further exemplify my point with this. We have to remember, when going in as a new player, there was a point in time where people finished these quests and had nothing to do. This is what you'll run into at the end of the stories and at the end of the expansions. You will get patches. These patches will have additional story points, additional lore, and none of that lore is filler. All of that lore plays a role in the stories later on. So that's something to remember. It can be daunting. I'm going to tell you this now. To have a solid story wrap up, finish out, and then you're greeted with not even the next expansion, but a smaller segment of a smaller story that's just kind of there. But again, they're all kind of important. There's a lot to take away from this that I'm trying to put out for people that are just now coming into the game, but a few things I wanna wrap this all up with. First, don't try to do every piece of filler content if you're just now getting into the game. You're gonna burn yourself out, and you're gonna end up not having fun. I'm gonna go over some of the other types of content in different videos and explain what they are for you, and there you can pick out what you would like to do. I am just here to help facilitate a way of play that might be good or fun for you. That is what this video is for, and that is what the series is gonna be for. Another thing, I heavily recommend you either having friends that already play the game and playing with them, or you actually be social within the confines of the game. Because I promise you, it is so much better when you have people to play it with. It is an MMORPG. Now, this is coming from someone who solos MMOs a lot. Neverwinter, freaking Phantasy Star Online 2, New Genesis, and the original. Back when Lunia was around, not a lot of people are gonna know about that. Apple story, Nas Tale, as the story. I can do this all day. I played a lot of MMOs, and I was not social in a lot of them, but that's just my personality. I recommend it for this game. I really do, because unless you are heavily invested in the story, and you might be, but there will be points where you're not. Let me say this: there will be points where the story is gonna be like, you just want to get to the next part. In those moments, it's good to have friends to run dungeons with, do raids with, heck, join a free company. These are things that I absolutely recommend you do in the early stages of the game and when you actually start playing. So hopefully the next video that I do will be on Fates. It will either be on Fates or it'll be on job quests and how they actually work. We'll get more into different types of other content that I will call filler content. And please, people, when I say that, do not take it as an insult to the content, because it's not. It's just stuff to fill the room. It's just stuff to fill the content up, to give it a little bit more fluff, to make it more robust. That's literally it. But we'll talk about more things in different videos. For now, have a great day, morning, noon, or night, whatever it is, wherever you are. And I hope to see you guys in the next chapter, in the next video, in the next episode of this series. Be blessed.